He was on his way home from a long shift, tired, quiet, still wearing his paramedic uniform when the flashing lights appeared behind him. Hakim thought it was a routine stop, until the officer started laughing while tightening the cuffs around his wrists. He didn't resist, didn't speak, because men like him had learned that silence could mean survival. But what that cop didn't know was who Hakim truly was, and how one courtroom would turn humiliation into history. What could make a police officer salute the man he once arrested? Hakim Williams wasn't just another man driving home that night. He was the kind of person who ran toward chaos when others ran away. A 33-year-old paramedic from Charlotte, North Carolina, he'd spent the last decade saving strangers. Heart attacks, car crashes, overdoses, you name it. His co-workers said he had the calmest hands in the room, the kind that made you believe you'd live. But when the sirens weren't for him to drive, when they screamed behind his car, that calm was tested like never before. He lived a quiet life. A small house near Beatty's Ford Road, a garden he tended between shifts, Sunday dinners with his mother who still called him my hero. Hakim believed in routine, in peace, in doing right by people. The kind of man who waved at neighbors and never left a call unfinished. But that night, as he turned off the main road, he noticed a white SUV tailing him closer and closer. The driver wasn't signaling, wasn't passing, just following. He didn't think much of it at first. Charlotte had its share of impatient drivers. But when the blue lights flicked on, his heart sank. Not because he'd done something wrong, but because he'd seen enough news to know what could happen next. He pulled over calmly, hands visible on the wheel, the way his mother had taught him years ago. The officer stepped out, laughing under his breath before he even reached the window. Something about the smirk on that man's face told Hakim this wasn't going to be a normal stop. That's where his ordinary night began to unravel, and by the time the sun rose, one man's prejudice would collide with another man's purpose in a way no one could forget. The flashlight beam hit Hakim's face before the officer even spoke. "License and registration," the man said, voice sharp, almost mocking. Hakim nodded, moving slow, every movement deliberate. But before he could even reach the glove box, the officer barked, "Hands where I can see them." The laugh that followed wasn't nervous. It was cruel. Like this was entertainment. Hakim's chest tightened. He'd treated gunshot victims who looked calmer than he felt right then. The neighborhood was quiet, except for the sound of the engine idling and the officer's boots crunching the gravel. He explained softly, "I'm an EMT, sir. My ID's right in my pocket." But the man didn't care. He just circled the car, shining his light across the back seat. "Looks like you're in a hurry tonight. Step out." There was no reason, no traffic violation, just a tone, a look, a judgment already made. When Hakim opened the door, another cruiser pulled up. Back up. For a man who hadn't even been accused of a crime. The second officer smirked, asking, "What did he do?" The first one shrugged. "Doesn't matter. We'll find out." And they did what too many men in uniform have done. They looked for a reason after they'd already decided guilt. They said his car matched a suspect description. They said his behavior seemed evasive. But all Hakim had done was exist. At night, in uniform, while black. Within minutes, his hands were behind his back, steel tightening around his wrists. The first officer chuckled again as the cuffs clicked. "You can't even laugh, huh?" he said. "Come on, lighten up, hero." That word, hero, cut deep. Hakim had saved a police officer once during a roadside crash. He'd held pressure to a wound for 10 minutes straight, talking the man through the pain until help arrived. He never forgot the look of gratitude on that officer's face. But now, looking up at the flashing lights reflecting off his own car, all he saw was power turned inside out. Neighbors peeked from windows. Someone filmed. Hakim said nothing. The humiliation burned hotter than anger. Every flash, every laugh, every smirk carved a wound he couldn't show. They searched his car, tossed his medical bag, opened compartments, and found nothing. But instead of admitting the mistake, the officer said, "Resisting search, huh? That's obstruction." It was a lie, and Hakim knew lies like that could end lives. He spent the night in a holding cell that smelled of bleach and cold metal. No charges, no explanation. Just waiting. Hours later, the same officer came by the cell, grinning. "Guess you're free to go. Must have been a mix-up." A mix-up. Two words that erased a lifetime of discipline, service, and dignity. But Hakim wasn't the kind of man to let injustice rot in silence. When he got home, wrists still sore, he didn't rage. He documented. He filed a formal complaint. He contacted the department's internal affairs. And when they brushed him off, he found a lawyer. Because this time, he wasn't saving a stranger's life. He was saving his own name. Weeks passed, then came the call. Case accepted. Civil rights hearing scheduled. And that's when everything changed. Because when the officer who once laughed walked into that courtroom, he didn't know the truth waiting for him inside. The courtroom was packed. Journalists in the back. Officers in uniform lined against the wall. And neighbors who remembered that night standing silently behind Hakim. He sat straight, hands clasped on the table, the same composure he'd held through 100 emergencies. But this time, he wasn't there to save a life. He was there to defend his own. When the bailiff called the officer's name, Sergeant Dylan Cross, the room fell still. The same man who had laughed while cuffing him now walked in wearing a pressed uniform and a smirk that said he still didn't take any of this seriously. Hakim didn't flinch. He'd waited months for this moment. The department's attorney tried to paint it as a routine misunderstanding. Cross claimed Hakim had been agitated and non-compliant. But when Hakim's lawyer pressed play on the body cam footage obtained only after weeks of pressure, the truth spoke louder than any defense. The video showed everything. The mocking tone, the baseless search, the laughter as Hakim stood in cuffs. It showed Cross ignoring every ounce of professionalism his badge demanded. The jury's expressions shifted. A few officers in the back lowered their heads. Then came the moment that changed everything. Hakim's lawyer revealed a letter, written months before the incident, from the same police department, a commendation, signed by the chief, addressed to Hakim Williams for saving an officer's life on the I-85 accident. Gasps filled the courtroom. The letter had Cross's own signature at the bottom, the same man who once thanked him for pulling. His partner from a burning vehicle had now humiliated him on the side of the road. The silence that followed was heavy. Cross's smirk vanished. For the first time, he looked small, like the weight of his own cruelty had finally caught up to him. When the judge read the decision, violation of civil rights, departmental misconduct, suspension pending termination, the room stayed quiet. Cross stood, walked to Hakim, and for a moment just stared. Then, without a word, he raised his hand to his forehead and gave a slow, solemn salute. The same hand that once cuffed him now trembled in apology. And Hakim didn't move. He didn't need to. The truth had already spoken. When the hearing ended, Hakim walked out of the courthouse into the warm Carolina sunlight. For the first time in months, his wrists felt free. not just from the cuffs that once bruised them, but from the weight of silence he'd carried since that night. Cameras flashed, microphones reached for his words, but he didn't give speeches. He just said quietly, "I'm not angry. I just wanted the truth to matter." Within days, the story spread across the country. News outlets replayed the footage, the laughter, the arrogance, the salute. Social media lit up with one question: how many Hakims have we ignored before this? Civil rights advocates called it a small but significant victory, proof that accountability doesn't always come in riots or fire. It can come in truth, documented and undeniable. But for Hakim, the victory wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet moments after, returning to his ambulance shift, pulling on his gloves, saving lives again. The same community that once whispered now waved, honked, thanked him for standing tall. Still, he knew the battle wasn't just his. Every time he answered a 911 call in uniform, he felt the eyes that lingered too long, the hesitation that said, "You're different." Racism didn't vanish in one courtroom. It just got exposed for what it was. Yet, something had shifted. The same officer who once mocked him now served as a reminder that dignity can't be arrested, that respect isn't given by rank or badge, it's earned by character. And in that truth, Hakim found peace. He rebuilt his life the same way he treated every patient, steady, patient, and full of hope that one act of courage can start a chain reaction. Because his story wasn't just about one night or one cop, it was about every person who's ever been silenced, doubted, or disrespected simply for existing. And now, his question echoes louder than ever. How many more will it take before the world stops needing proof that a black man's dignity is worth defending? Don't miss more powerful real-life stories. Hit subscribe now.